Hi everyone, welcome back to Redesigned Rose. I'm Jen Rose. This week's video, I promised you guys I would show you how to crochet with no hook, just our hands. Stay with me. This is super easy. I think that you'll find it very, very rewarding and quite honestly, hard to put down. Not only while you're making the blanket, but also when we're done. I'll talk to you guys in the video about the type of yarn that I used, the colors that I chose for this blanket that give it that doppled ombre effect and how I achieved that. And I just can't wait. Let's get started. If you wanted to do the exact same colors, it's the baby blanket dappled in the Misty jungle green and the Bernat baby blanket in the Seafoam. And for today, we're just using the Seafoam, 2 strands of that put together, and we'll get our blanket. We'll do a sample of 12 chains for my beginners out there. After we've created our slip knot, I'm just gonna place our finger and thumb through, grab your working yarn. I like to hold my slip knot while I pull that through, and you've created a chain. Same thing, grab my working yarn, pull through, I've created a chain. And you're just going to do that. If you want to do that for your full 40, go ahead and do that now, and I'll meet you at the end. Now, after I've gone a few chains, I'll go ahead and let go of that slip knot, and now I like to hold on closer to where I'm working. And the reason for that is just to help keep the right amount of tension so that each one of these chains that I'm making stays fairly consistent in size. We don't need to get crazy and measure them out, but we do want them to be fairly consistent. And as you can see, you're getting that braid pattern, which is our chain. I don't normally do this right now, but for today, I'm gonna go ahead and cut off our chain or tails from our chain, just so that they don't get into the mix of what I'm trying to show you, especially since we're working with 2 strands. I don't want to confuse you, so we'll make it as easy as possible. Now, if you have gotten distracted or you had to put this down for a minute and go tend to something and you're wondering, oh my gosh, how many chains have I done? I've completely forgotten. I don't know if I've done my 40. I don't know how many I've done. Very easy to tell. All you're going to do is grab your chain, and each one of these top and bottom V stitches, or you can also count by what I will show you we're going to crochet into, these bumps right here on the top. That is how you can tell the number of chains, is simply by counting these. This last chain really wants to stay giant. All right, so you would simply just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We're gonna do one more for our 12th stitch. Okay. So you'll be able to see those very easy. Now, if you've watched my videos by now, you know that I like to crochet my first row or even knit my first row into these top bumps. A lot of patterns will have you go ahead and just start crocheting into this top loop up here. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just prefer that if I'm crocheting into these bumps here, that the bottom of my blanket gives a nice braid, which is the same thing you'll see at the very top of your blanket when we're done. And just to keep those looking the same, this is just how I do my first row. Now, normally we would have a crochet hook in here, but today's video is crocheting with our hands. So I'm just going to insert my finger as if it's a crochet hook, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my very first bump here. Insert. I like to do my thumb and finger, especially for this first row. And I'm gonna pull my yarn through. So now I have 2 loops on my finger here. Then I'll put my thumb in, grab my working yarn and pull it through both. And that is your very first single crochet. And then I will go to my next bump in each one of these to do my next stitch. Insert my finger and thumb here, grab my yarn, pull through. So once again, I have my 2 loops on my finger. I like to put my thumb in there just because it's easier, and pull through. And now I have 2 single crochets. Third bump here. And you're just going to go ahead and do this all the way down the row. Now feel free to go ahead and go all the way to the end of your row, and I will meet you there in just a moment. We are at the end of the first row. You just always want to make sure we don't miss this very last stitch. That is the first thing you want to remember. And so what you end up having, I've smashed this a little bit, what you end up having is your first row of single crochets. And you can see how thick these are, and as you do each row, you're going to find just how quickly this blanket builds up. And that is what makes these so nice and fast and easy. As you can see, the bottom of the blanket here has that really nice braid pattern that I always brag about, because this is exactly what the top of your blanket will look like. I like them to match. So first thing you remember at the end of every row is going to be to make sure you don't miss the last stitch. That way your blanket stays straight. The other thing you need to do to keep your blanket straight is, because we're doing a single crochet, we're going to chain 1. This is what we refer to as our turning chain. And then we turn our work. What we do in our crochet, I know a lot of people will show you by looking at the top of your stitch, and is technically correct, because each one of these V patterns that you see here, that is considered a stitch. And we're going to go into each one of these as we build our next row here. And so you're going to be putting your finger, which acts as your hook, through both sides. Okay, we will confuse you later on some other blanket patterns where we're just going to crochet into the back loop or the front loop, but for today we're going to go through both. Now if your blanket is laying this way, another way to identify where you're going to put your finger or your hook is in between each one of these bumps, just like this. Here's the other bonus: if you need to put your blanket down for any reason, if you have to go tend to something, come back, super easy. All you do, put your finger right back through your loop and continue on as if nothing happened. Now, because we did our turning chain, we're not going to go into this first stitch. That counted as our first stitch, and that's going to keep a nice straight blanket. So we're actually going to go to the next one here. So if I go through here, it's the same thing as going through those top 2 V stitches. I just like to look at it this way because it helps me to quickly identify and make sure I'm stacking on top. And that becomes more clear as you practice. Now, when I go through these, I don't necessarily need to do my thumb on these. I can just grab my yarn with my finger and pull it through. The first row was a little tighter, so I couldn't do it as well. I needed my thumb, but I do typically stick my thumb in here to pull it through the next 2 stitches. All right, so same thing, next stitch right in here. Insert your finger, pull your working yarn through. I like to stick my thumb in there, grab onto my working yarn, and pull through both. And you're just going to keep doing this Sometimes you can even pull that away and you can kind of see the hole where your finger needs to go and pull that through easier. And pull through. And you're just going to continue to do this to the end of your row. Once again, feel free to put me on pause and go all the way to the end of your row. And then I will show you how to start row 3. So we are at the end of our second row. And remember, the first thing we want to remember at the end of each row, our last stitch is kind of hanging off to the side here. And see that? From the front, you see that little knot, and this is also a way that helps me to remember this last stitch, because if I'm constantly going to the side of each one of these, I won't miss this. But you'll have to grab your V, which slopes down a little bit, instead of being the V just straight directly on top. I hope that makes sense. This really is the trickiest part for my beginners, and it is the trickiest part for me when I first started learning. But once again, just make sure you grab that last stitch, pull your working yarn through, pull through both. And that way it will ensure that you've got that nice, straight, even blanket. Now, none of these are going to be perfectly straight, but the number of stitches will be, because our tension does vary a little bit, and this is a stretchy yarn. But we at least want it to be as symmetrical as possible, and definitely same number of stitches. Okay, so again, I've put it down. I could walk away, go do something, I can come back. The second thing we need to remember at the end of our row, first one, don't miss the last stitch. Second thing, turning chain, and then turn our work. You can put these down if you need to, but quite honestly, they do work up so quick. And if you're just really enjoying yourself, like most people do, like I do for sure, you're not gonna wanna put it down. So anyway, let's go ahead and start our third row here. And again, we've created our turning chain, so we don't need to go into this first stitch. We're gonna go into the second one. We're just gonna do that single crochet, again, for the entire blanket. All right, so once again, we gotta make sure we grab this last stitch. And as you can see with mine, this part of it is kind of over the front of the blanket, and this one is coming around the back instead of that slope like we did on this one. So sometimes you just have to find it. Once again, just make sure you grab through and complete that last stitch. And you will have your symmetrical blanket. So first thing we remember, last stitch. Second thing we always remember, chain once to turn. No, I'm not out of yarn, but we're gonna pretend like I am. If you're doing a blanket with multiple colors, maybe you wanna do a color change at this point. If you're doing a solid color, let's pretend I ran out of yarn. All I'm gonna do is take the end of my yarn. We're gonna pretend like this is 2 brand new skeins, and you're simply going to tie a knot. It's that easy. And you're gonna wanna tie that nice and tight. Next thing you're gonna do is, some people will leave these tails on and just weave it into the pattern, but I do find that they tend to poke through, and I'm not a fan of that. So I do go ahead, take my scissors, and I'm gonna cut nice and close to that knot. And don't be afraid here, because the yarn is going to break before that knot comes undone. So yes, we can see the knot here, but as we crochet as normal, that knot is going to disappear into our pattern. So here's our knot again. We're gonna put our finger through to pick this back up, And once again, I've already done my turning chain, so I don't need to go into this stitch. I'm gonna go right into the next one. Pull that through and see our knot here? It just got buried. Nobody will ever know it's there. All right, I'm just gonna keep going through here to the end of our row. All right, so once again, I'm at the end of my row, and again, that stitch is kind of going a little sideways and funny. So you just wanna pick up both of those, put your fingers through, pull through, grab your working yarn, pull through both. We remembered our last stitch. We're remembering to chain 1 and turn. I'm gonna go ahead and work up a few more rows just so you can see this sample, but really this is your entire blanket. When I get to the end of a few more rows here, I'll show you how to end the blanket. I'm at the end of the last row I'll do today. And if you are at the end of your blanket, the end of your last row, you're still gonna do that last stitch. The only difference is we're gonna go ahead and cut off any remaining yarn that we're not going to use. And instead of doing a turning chain like we would normally do, we're gonna pull the last of our working yarn through and simply tie a knot. Now, I do like to go ahead and weave a little bit of this through my top chain, and because we've used our fingers, there should be plenty of room for you to be able to do this with your fingers. I just kind of weave back and forth, pull on it a little so I didn't pull it too tight. And then I like to go ahead and grab a stitch and tie one more knot just for a little extra security. Some people will just weave the whole tail all the way through and not do the extra knot. There is no right or wrong way, but I just hide that little knot there. Once again, take my scissors and cut nice and close to that knot. And just tuck it in and you'll never know it's there. And this is a sample size of that blanket. And of course, what I would do the same thing for my tail. I would weave a little bit in, tie an extra knot, just like we just did. For now, I'm just gonna trim that so that my sample looks a little bit better. Super soft, super squishy, super thick. And as you can see, once again, top and bottom both have the same braid. That's it for this week's video. I hope you found the video helpful, informative, inspirational. I hope it was easy to follow along. Let me know in the comments below if you have any feedback. I welcome your feedback. So many of you have been very, very kind, and you've shown me pictures of your blankets that you're making. It is so exciting. It's so exciting to see that inspiration come to life, and just to be able to hear from you guys and reach out to get to know some of you. Stay tuned. These are still very, very beginner friendly blankets. I do have some more intermediate type blankets coming up, so I hope you don't miss out on those. Additionally, sneak peek at this brick wall here behind me. I finally finished it, guys. It's done. 2,000 years later, it's done, and I cannot wait to give the big reveal to you. So I will be starting to share with you guys some more of my DIY besides the blanket and crochet. Lots of stuff coming. I have plaster giant bowl that I did from an old light fixture, believe it or not. Some plaster vases, old world style. Cannot wait to share those with you. Lots of stuff coming, lots of paint coming, lots of furniture makeovers coming. So please stay tuned. Cannot wait. And in the meantime, I hope you can like, comment, share, subscribe, anything you can do to help me bring more content to you guys to share and collaborate with you. I greatly appreciate it. In the meantime, happy crocheting, everybody.